When Emma and I first met, she had this energy about her, a spark that drew people in. It was one of the things I loved most about her, and over the years, it became the glue that held us together. We'd built a life that I thought was as solid as the foundation of the houses I designed. 20 years of marriage, an 18-year-old daughter named Lily who was preparing for college, and a home filled with laughter and warmth. I'd never imagined that those very things could mask something darker beneath the surface. Ryan had been a fixture in our home for the past 3 years. As Lily's best friend, he'd grown close to our family. He wasn't just some kid who hung out with Lily, he was practically part of the family. At 20, he was charming and polite, always quick with a joke and willing to help out around the house. Emma, in particular, seemed to take a liking to him. She'd often bake cookies when she knew he was coming over, and they'd chat about his plans for the future. I didn't think much of it at first. Emma was naturally warm and nurturing, and Ryan had been through a lot. His dad had walked out when he was 10, and his mom worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Emma's attention probably felt like a lifeline to him. But over time, things started to shift. It wasn't any one thing that set off alarms in my head. It was a collection of small moments, fleeting, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. I'd come home from work to find Emma and Ryan laughing together in the kitchen, their heads close as they shared some private joke. She'd brush a strand of hair behind her ear in that way she used to do when we first started dating, her cheeks slightly flushed. Ryan, on the other hand, would always seem a little too eager to stay just a bit longer, even after Lily had gone to bed. One evening, I walked into the living room and found them sitting on the couch. Emma's feet were tucked under her, her body angled toward Ryan as he animatedly recounted a story about a party he'd attended. Lily was upstairs finishing homework, and the two of them didn't even notice me at first. When they did, Emma's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she greeted me. "Hey Han, how was work?" "Fine," I replied, though I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd interrupted something. Ryan quickly excused himself, saying he had an early shift the next day. I watched him leave, his shoulders tense, and when I turned back to Emma, she was already scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice more. Emma had started dressing differently. She'd always been beautiful, but now she seemed to be putting extra effort into her appearance. Tight jeans, low-cut tops, makeup applied with precision. When I commented on it, she'd laugh it off. "I just want to feel good about myself," she'd say, her tone light but dismissive. I wanted to believe her, but a part of me couldn't. Then there were the late-night texts. Emma had always been glued to her phone, but now she'd angled the screen away from me when I walked by. One night, as we lay in bed, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She grabbed it quickly, her fingers flying across the screen. "Work stuff," she mumbled when she caught me looking. I nodded, though I couldn't ignore the way her shoulders tensed as she typed. It wasn't until a Saturday afternoon that the doubts solidified into something more concrete. Lily had gone to the mall with friends, leaving Emma and me alone in the house. I'd planned to catch up on some work in my home office, but when I came downstairs to grab a coffee, I heard voices coming from the living room. Emma and Ryan were there, sitting closer than I'd ever seen them before. Her hand rested lightly on his knee, and they were talking in hushed tones. I froze, the coffee mug halfway to my lips, my mind racing. They hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment, I considered walking away, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But something about the way Ryan leaned toward her, his face serious, stopped me. "Everything okay?" I asked, stepping into the room. Emma jerked her hand back as if she'd been burned. Ryan stood up quickly, his face turning red. "Yeah, just talking about Lily," Emma said, her voice overly bright. "She's been a little stressed about college stuff, and Ryan was just sharing some advice." Ryan mumbled something about needing to get going and practically bolted out the door. Emma didn't meet my eyes as she smoothed her hair and picked up her phone. "You're being weird," she said with a nervous laugh. "What's with the 3rd degree?" "I didn't say anything," I replied, though my mind was screaming with questions. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I lay awake beside Emma, staring at the ceiling as her breathing deepened into sleep. My thoughts were a whirlwind of suspicion and guilt. I didn't want to believe that the woman I'd loved for so long, the mother of my child, could betray me like this. But the pieces were starting to fit together, and I couldn't unsee them. The next day, I made a decision. If Emma wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo of doubt. As I watched her laugh with Lily over breakfast, my heart ached with the weight of what I was about to do. I had no idea that my search for the truth would lead me down a path darker than I ever imagined. The morning after my resolve to uncover the truth, I found myself alone in the house. Emma had left early for her usual Pilates class, and Lily was off meeting friends at the library for a group project. The house was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that made you acutely aware of every sound, the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator. My mind was racing, and the opportunity was clear. If I wanted answers, this was the time to act. Emma's laptop sat on the kitchen counter, as it often did after her late-night sessions of online shopping or planning family events. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to cross a line I knew would be hard to come back from. But the gnawing suspicion in my gut left me little choice. Taking a deep breath, I opened the laptop. The screen came to life, asking for a password. Emma wasn't one for complicated codes, and our wedding anniversary, the same date engraved inside our wedding bands, unlocked it. The desktop was neat, almost too neat, with only a few folders and shortcuts visible. My eyes scanned the screen, searching for anything that might stand out. Then I noticed an open tab in her browser, an email account I didn't recognize. The name, Emma L. Private, appeared in the corner, and my heart sank. I clicked on it, and the inbox loaded with a series of messages, most of them from someone named Ryan M. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the mouse. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading but couldn't avoid. Taking another deep breath, I clicked on the most recent email. The subject line read, "Last night." The message was short but damning. Emma, I can't stop thinking about last night. The way you looked at me, the way you made me feel. I've never experienced anything like it. I know this is complicated, but I don't care. You're worth it. Asterisk. Ryan. The words blurred as my pulse quickened. My hands shook as I clicked through more messages, each one confirming what I feared. They ranged from flirtatious exchanges to explicit details about their encounters. They'd been meeting in secret, hotels, the back seat of his car, even our own home while I was at work. My stomach churned at the thought of their betrayal under my own roof. One email in particular stood out. It was a thread where Emma had sent a photo of herself, one I'd never seen before. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize, standing in front of a mirror with a coy smile. Ryan's reply was instantaneous and enthusiastic, praising her beauty and expressing his impatience for their next meeting. I slammed the laptop shut, my mind racing. The weight of what I'd discovered felt suffocating. I paced the kitchen, running my hands through my hair. The betrayal was undeniable, but the question now was what to do about it. Part of me wanted to confront Emma immediately, to demand answers and vent the fury building inside me. But another part, the logical part, knew I needed more. If I wanted to protect myself, and Lily, from the fallout, I needed to approach this carefully. Over the next few days, I started piecing together more evidence. Emma's phone became my next target. I'd never been the kind of husband to invade her privacy, but the circumstances left me no choice. One evening, as she showered, I took her phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled as I navigated through her messages and apps. There it was again, Ryan's name. Their text thread was filled with the same kind of exchanges I'd seen in the emails, flirtation, plans to meet, and even discussions about keeping their relationship hidden. My heart sank further when I stumbled upon photos they'd shared, selfies of Ryan, shirtless and grinning, and Emma, posing in ways that made my stomach churn. Then I found a message that stopped me cold. Ryan, do you think he suspects anything? Emma, no, he's oblivious. I've got everything under control. The words felt like a slap to the face. Oblivious. Under control. As if I were some fool who couldn't see what was happening right under his nose. I put the phone back where I'd found it, my chest tight with anger and humiliation. The next step was to confirm their meetings. I started paying closer attention to Emma's schedule, noting when she claimed to be out running errands or attending Pilates classes. One evening she said she had a book club meeting. I knew better by now. I followed her, keeping a safe distance as she drove across town to a small boutique hotel. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I watched her car pull into the parking lot. Minutes later, Ryan's car appeared, and he joined her at the entrance. They disappeared inside together. I sat there for what felt like hours, the reality of the situation sinking in deeper with each passing minute. When Emma finally emerged, her hair slightly disheveled and her cheeks flushed, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak that words can't describe. I drove home before she could notice me, my mind already working on the next steps. Back at the house, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of emails and texts, photos of the hotel rendezvous, and notes about her suspicious behavior. I didn't know yet what I'd do with the information, but having it felt like regaining some semblance of control. Despite the overwhelming evidence, I found myself hesitating. Confronting Emma meant shattering the life we'd built together, the family we'd created. It meant hurting Lily, who adored her mother and had no idea about the storm brewing beneath the surface. But the longer I waited, the more the anger festered. Emma's betrayal wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it was a betrayal of the trust and love that had been the foundation of our family. The breaking point came one evening when Lily asked if Ryan could join us for dinner. Emma's face lit up at the suggestion, and she eagerly agreed. Watching her excitement, knowing what I knew, was too much to bear. I excused myself, retreating to the garage where I sat in the darkness, wrestling with my emotions. I couldn't stay silent any longer. The time had come to confront Emma, to lay everything out in the open and demand the truth. Little did I know, the confrontation would reveal even more than I'd uncovered, secrets that would upend not just our marriage, but the very foundation of our lives. The night of the confrontation began innocently enough, with Emma preparing her famous pot roast. Lily and I set the table while she hummed to herself, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Ryan arrived promptly at 7, flashing his usual confident smile. He carried a bottle of wine, which Emma accepted with a warmth that turned my stomach. As we sat down to eat, I couldn't help but observe their interactions with new eyes. The subtle glances, the shared laughter at inside jokes, the way her hand brushed his arm when she passed him the mashed potatoes, all of it screamed intimacy. I clenched my jaw, barely able to maintain my composure. Lily, oblivious to the tension, chatted about her school project, her voice the only thing keeping the evening from collapsing under the weight of unspoken truths. When dinner ended, Emma and Ryan moved to the living room while Lily went upstairs to study. I stayed behind, pretending to clean up the kitchen but really just buying time to gather my courage. The voices from the living room carried into the kitchen, their light-hearted tone a sharp contrast to the turmoil in my chest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the living room, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. Emma looked up at me, her smile faltering slightly. Ryan's expression was unreadable, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Emma's brow furrowed. "Now? Can it wait?" "No," I said firmly, locking eyes with her. "It can't." Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. "Maybe I should go." "No," I said sharply, cutting him off. "You're part of this too." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma's eyes darted to Ryan, then back to me. "What's going on, Jake?" I took a deep breath, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I know, Emma. I know about you and Ryan." Her face went pale, her eyes widening in shock. Ryan froze, his confident facade crumbling as the color drained from his face. For a moment, no one spoke, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a thundercloud. "What are you talking about?" Emma finally said, her voice shaky. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the folder I'd created with all the evidence. Emails, text messages, photos, everything was there. I tossed it onto the coffee table, the screen lighting up with a damning message exchange between the two of them. Emma stared at the phone, her hand trembling as she reached for it. Ryan sat back, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting toward the door, as if calculating his chances of escape. "How long?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on?" Emma didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the screen. Ryan finally spoke, his voice low and defensive. "Look, Jake, I think you're misunderstanding." "Don't," I snapped, cutting him off. "Don't you dare insult my intelligence." "I have proof, Ryan." "So unless you want to keep dodging the truth, you'd better start talking." Ryan's face turned beet red, and he stammered. "We didn't break any rules." The words hit me like a slap, the sheer audacity of his defense igniting a fresh wave of anger. "Rules? You think technicalities excuse what you've done?" Emma finally found her voice, though it was barely above a whisper. "Jake, please. I can explain." "Explain?" I repeated, incredulous. "Explain what? How you betrayed me? How you destroyed our family?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't find it in me to feel sympathy. Not after everything I'd discovered. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "But it did," I said coldly. "And now you have to live with the consequences." Ryan stood abruptly, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Look, man, I'll leave. You won't have to see me again." "Damn right you won't," I said, stepping closer to him. "But don't think for a second that this is over. You've messed with the wrong family." Ryan didn't wait for further invitation. He grabbed his jacket and bolted for the door, leaving Emma and me alone in the suffocating silence. She sat on the couch, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but instead I stood there, numb and hollow. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, had become a stranger. And in that moment I knew there was no going back. Later that night, I sat in the garage, nursing a beer and staring at the ceiling. The confrontation had been ugly, but it was only the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with difficult conversations and painful decisions. But one thing was clear: I couldn't let Emma's betrayal define me. I had to find a way to move forward, for my sake and for Lily's. As I sat there, lost in thought, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. "Jake, there's something you need to know. Call me. Ryan." My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen, a new wave of dread washing over me. What more could there possibly be? Against my better judgment I pressed "call" and waited as the phone rang. When Ryan's voice came through the line, it was shaky and full of urgency. "Jake, I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But this isn't just about me and Emma. There's more to the story. You need to know the truth." The line went silent for a moment, and then he dropped a bombshell that left me reeling. "It's about Lily." The words echoed in my head, louder than the pounding of my heart. "It's about Lily." My grip on the phone tightened, the plastic creaking under the pressure. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice barely above a growl. Ryan hesitated, his breathing uneven. "Jake, I don't even know where to start. But I couldn't keep this to myself. I care about Lily, and I couldn't let Emma's lies hurt her any more than they already have." "Cut the cryptic crap, Ryan. Say what you mean, or I swear." "Emma isn't who you think she is," he interrupted, his voice trembling. "And Lily. Jake, there's a chance she's not your daughter." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, the weight of his words crashing down like a tidal wave. "What did you just say?" I whispered, the fury in my chest tempered by an icy dread. "Look, I don't have all the details," Ryan stammered. But Emma told me she slipped up during one of our conversations. She mentioned a man, someone she was with around the time Lily was conceived. She never said his name, but the way she talked about it, Jake, it didn't sound like it was just a one-time thing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The room spun as my mind raced, piecing together fragments of memories, moments that had seemed insignificant at the time but now took on a sinister hue. Emma's sudden mood swings during her pregnancy, the way she deflected questions about her past, it all came rushing back. "You're lying," I said, though the conviction in my voice wavered. "I wish I were," Ryan replied. "But you deserve to know the truth. You need to talk to Emma." I hung up without another word, my hands trembling as I stared at the phone. Could it be true? Could the daughter I'd raised, the girl who was the light of my life, not be mine? The thought was unbearable, but I couldn't ignore the possibility. I needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to me. Emma was still sitting in the living room when I stormed back inside, her face streaked with tears. She looked up as I entered, her expression shifting from sorrow to alarm at the sight of me. "Jake, what?" "Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't you dare play innocent. I just got off the phone with Ryan." Her eyes widened, and she paled visibly. "What did he say?" "He said Lily might not be my daughter," I said, each word laced with venom. "Is it true, Emma? Did you cheat on me before she was born?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself to stay upright, fueled by a mix of rage and despair. "How could you?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "How could you let me love her, raise her, thinking she was mine, if there was even a chance she wasn't?" Tears streamed down her face as she finally found her voice. "Jake, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this. I didn't even know for sure." "You didn't know?" I roared. "You mean you suspected, but you decided to keep me in the dark anyway?" "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "It happened before we were married. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't want to lose you." Her words only deepened the wound. "You didn't want to lose me, so you lied to me for 18 years? You let me build my life around a lie?" "It wasn't a lie," she insisted. "You're her father in every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that. Don't you dare try to justify this," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "You took away my choice, Emma. You made a fool of me." The room fell silent, the weight of our shattered trust hanging between us. Emma's sobs filled the void, but they did little to soften the jagged edges of my pain. I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. That night, I found myself back in the garage, staring at the stack of old photo albums I'd dragged out from the attic. Each page was a minefield of memories, moments that now felt tainted by the revelation of Emma's betrayal. Pictures of Lily's first steps, her first day of school, her prom, all of them stared back at me, a cruel reminder of the life I thought I'd built. I didn't sleep that night, my mind consumed by questions I couldn't answer. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I scheduled a paternity test, the weight of my uncertainty pressing down on me with every passing second. A week later, the results arrived. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the sound of the paper tearing. The words on the page blurred as I read them, my vision clouded by tears. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Relief washed over me, overwhelming in its intensity. Lily was mine. She was my daughter. But the relief was quickly overshadowed by the lingering pain of Emma's betrayal. The test might have confirmed my bond with Lily, but it couldn't repair the damage to my marriage. As I sat there, clutching the results, I realized that my journey wasn't over. The truth had given me clarity, but it hadn't brought closure. That was something I would have to find on my own, one step at a time. The truth about Lily brought a momentary sense of relief, but it did little to mend the gaping wounds left by Emma's betrayal. Knowing that Lily was biologically mine didn't erase the lies that had defined my marriage for nearly 2 decades. Trust, once shattered, is not easily pieced back together. In the days that followed, I found myself retreating into a shell. Emma's apologies were constant, her pleas for forgiveness relentless, but they fell on deaf ears. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. The life we had built together felt like a house of cards, and with one gust of wind, it had all come tumbling down. One evening, as I sat alone in the kitchen nursing a cup of coffee, Lily walked in. She noticed the tension in the house, though she didn't know the full extent of what had happened. She pulled out a chair and sat across from me, her eyes searching mine. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "is everything okay? You and Mom, you've both been acting different lately." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Things are complicated right now, Lily. But I promise, no matter what happens, it doesn't change how much I love you." Her brow furrowed, concern etched on her face. "Are you and Mom going to split up?" The question caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Finally I said, "I don't know. We're working through some things, but it's not something you need to worry about. This is between me and her." Lily nodded, though her worry was evident. "Just don't shut me out, okay? I'm here if you need to talk." Her words, so simple yet so heartfelt, struck a chord. In that moment, I realized that whatever happened with Emma, I couldn't let it define my relationship with my daughter. She was my anchor, the one thing in my life that remained steadfast and true. That night, I confronted Emma one final time. We sat across from each other in the living room, the air heavy with unspoken words. "Emma," I began, my voice steady but firm, "I've made a decision. I'm not sure if our marriage can survive this, but for Lily's sake, I'm willing to try. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take effort, from both of us." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes, Jake. I'll go to therapy. I'll be completely honest from now on. I just want to fix this." "Words aren't enough," I said. "Actions matter more. If you're serious about making this work, then prove it." She agreed, and for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, life began to take on a new rhythm. Emma and I started attending couples therapy, a painful but necessary process that forced us to confront our deepest fears and insecurities. There were days when it felt like we were making progress, and days when it felt like we were back at square one. But through it all, I held on to one guiding principle: I deserved the truth, and I deserved respect. Lily, for her part, remained a source of strength. Her unwavering love and support reminded me of what truly mattered. She'd always been wise beyond her years, and in many ways she became the glue that held our fractured family together. One afternoon, as I was cleaning out the garage, I stumbled upon an old box of letters. They were from Emma, written during the early years of our relationship. I hadn't seen them in decades, and as I read through them, I was struck by the depth of her love for me. It was a reminder of who we had been, and who we could still be if we worked hard enough. Among the letters, I found one that I'd never seen before. It was dated a few months before Lily's birth, and the words inside shook me to my core. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you, but I'm afraid. I made a mistake, and I don't know how to fix it. But I love you, and I hope you can forgive me. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I can't bear the thought of losing you. Love, Emma." She'd tried to tell me, all those years ago. She'd carried the burden of her guilt alone, too scared to face the consequences. It didn't excuse her actions, but it added a layer of complexity to our story. She hadn't been malicious, she'd been human. In the end, Emma and I decided to stay together. It wasn't an easy choice, and it wasn't one we made lightly. But we both knew that love, real love, is messy and imperfect. It's about forgiveness and growth, about choosing each other even when it's hard. Our marriage would never be the same, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. We'd been given a chance to rebuild, to create something stronger and more honest. And for that, I was grateful. As I stood in the kitchen one evening, watching Lily laugh with her friends, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. Life had thrown us a curveball, but we'd survived. And in that moment I knew we'd be okay. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.